They asked her to fetch coffee. Then she cut $5 million from their funding pipeline. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly at the edge of the room, observing, remembering, and deciding. Hey, guys, tonight we witness a betrayal so public, so quiet, it could have broken anyone. A startup pitch, a long table, and one woman they all overlooked until she stood up and changed everything. This isn't just a story. It's a mirror. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here at the Story Atelier. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe pour a glass of wine, and let's step into tonight's story together. You sit at the far end of the table. The chair legs uneven like the balance in this room. It's always the far end, isn't it? You've stopped noticing. You used to mind it. 15 years ago, when your name was still on the papers of the company you co-founded. The one you left when they said you were too intense of the culture. You've changed since then. So has the industry. But not enough. The glass walls of the conference room reflect them better than they reflect you. For young founders from post-board AI walking with the casual arrogance of men who believe they're the smartest in every room. Matching hoodies, perfectly messy hair, sneakers that probably cost more than your car in grad school. They don't look at you. They don't ask who you are. They nod at your assistant. Shake hands with Parker, your managing partner, and talk over the silence you keep like a second skin. You open your leather folio, click the pen twice, and begin to write, not because they're saying anything worth recording, but because it helps you stay still, helps you stay quiet. They're early. Of course they are. The eager ones always are. The ones who've been told they're brilliant since middle school, whose LinkedIn profiles read like speeches. Building the future, one neural net at a time. They don't wait for the meeting to start before pitching. They think being in the room is the pitch. Their CEO, Landon Greer, tall and lean in a self-conscious way, sets up his laptop, then glances around as if trying to locate the most important face in the room. He passes you without pause. Eyes slide past yours like a cursor skipping a comment. I assume your team's running late? He asks Parker. Parker doesn't respond. He just nods toward you. But Landon doesn't follow the cue. Instead, one of the co-founders, a redhead in a Patagonia vest, turns to you with a half smile. You know the type. Jake something. They always look like a Jake. He lifts his empty espresso cup. Hey, any chance you could grab a refill from the kitchen? I ran out of steam halfway through traffic. You look at him, then at the cup. His fingers smudge the glass near the rim, and you wonder if he'd dare hand that to anyone in a suit. You take a slow breath, write one word in your folio, unaware, then look up with a polite blink. No problem, you say softly. Parker shifts in his seat, jaw tight. You wave it off with your pen. Let them play. You walk to the kitchen. Not because you're here to serve them, but because sometimes the best advantage is giving people just enough rope. As you pour his espresso, you remember the last time someone mistook you for the assistant. The director of engineering at a Series B startup had once assumed you were there to take minutes. You declined to correct him. He corrected himself 2 weeks later, after your firm declined their funding with a single line. Leadership begins with recognition, not resume. You return to the boardroom and set the cup beside Jake with a faint smile. He thanks you, still without asking your name. Then they begin. The presentation is sleek. The graphics are sharp. There's a deck, a product demo, even a market projection that includes the word moonshot in cursive, but it's hollow in the way polished things often are. You've seen slides like these dozens of times. Clean logic built on dirty assumptions. The kind that banks on the world working the way they need it to, not the way it actually does. Jake, his name really is Jake, you see now from the slides, handles the financials. He stumbles briefly over their projected burn rate, but keeps going. Jenna Morales, the only woman on the team, never speaks unless spoken to. She clicks the slides like she's not allowed to drive. You study her a beat too long. She catches your glance once. Her eyes flicker, confused, defensive, and then distant. She's made peace with her place on the team, but not in a way that makes you believe she's safe there. You shift your pen, write 2 more words. Still invisible. Landon talks about growth, how their AI will optimize human decisions in hiring, team dynamics, DI monitoring. You press your tongue against your molars. If your tongue could laugh, it would. No one has mentioned product market fit. No one has acknowledged risk. No one has acknowledged you. When they finish, the room claps. Not because the pitch was good, but because everyone was trained to clap. You don't. You look down at the notes. The page is nearly full. Not with their words, but with their tells. No one has asked you a single question. They referenced 2 other funds, assumed someone else held the checkbook, and mentioned 5 male executives by name. None of them yours. You let the silence stretch. People always think silence is awkward, but silence to you is luxury. Silence makes them squirm. And then, right on cue, Parker clears his throat and says, "I'd like to introduce you all to someone." You don't look up. Not yet. "She's not our assistant," Parker continues. "She's the partner overseeing the portfolio. She decides what gets funded." The air shifts. Jake's hand drops from his coffee cup. Landon's eyebrows twitch, his mouth half opening into a smile that lands too late. And Jenna? She looks directly at you now, for the first time, but it's not respect you see. It's fear of what she missed, of what it says about her, that she didn't bother to see you either. You close your folio gently, fold your hands, let the silence do what it does best. Tell the truth about everyone in the room. That chair at the end of the table wasn't accidental. You chose it because it's easier to see who people really are when they think you're no one. You sit there still. But they're the ones being evaluated now, and they're not ready. Jake sips the coffee you brought him like it tastes the same, but suddenly burns. Landon shifts in his seat, brushing non-existent crumbs off his blazer. Parker leans back, hands folded, watching him do the math. Not in the pitch deck, but in the air between the table and your chair. You've seen this moment before. The scramble to recover dignity. They hadn't bothered to show anyone else. Landon recovers first. He leans forward, offers a warm laugh, like this is all some charming misunderstanding. "Well," he says, "it's great to finally meet you properly." Properly. You nod once. "No worries," you say. You were efficient with your assumptions. It lands. Not like a slap, but like a quiet red mark that won't favor ours. Jenna finally speaks. "I'm really sorry," she says quickly. I didn't realize." You look at her. She means it, but it doesn't matter, because she hadn't looked at you either. Not until now. "I used to be you," you say to her, calmly. 10 years ago. I knew every wire in the system, but people only asked if I double-checked the coffee filters. Landon forces a chuckle. "Well, we all start somewhere, right?" You look at him, then at the untouched espresso in front of Jake. Some of us just don't start where we're supposed to finish. You open your folio again, this time deliberately. The pages are clean, but your thoughts are not. You check a box near the bottom of the evaluation grid. Observes hierarchy. Relies on assumption. Fails to inquire. You ask your first question. How many women are on your leadership team? Jake answers 2 quickly. Jenna's lead operations. So 1 at the moment. You nod. And how many will there be if your team scales? They hesitate. Landon starts to say something about recruiting being organic. You raise your hand gently, like a teacher calling time. "I don't want the answer. I just want to know if you had one ready." You don't look at Jenna. You don't need to. You already know the sound of someone realizing they've been left out of a story they helped write. You close the folio. "I'm curious," Landon says, trying again. "What metrics do you personally weigh when deciding an investment like this?" You smile, and it's not friendly. "Humility," you reply. He waits for you to go on. You don't. The silence sharpens. It cuts between their expensive phrases. Words like scalability, leverage, and go-to-market don't sound as strong now. They flail. "I think if you reviewed our growth strategy," Jake says, tapping his laptop, "we'd clear any benchmark. We've been talking to Red Summit and Catalyst Group. Both express soft commitments." You glance toward Parker. He raises an eyebrow just slightly. Soft commitments. From funds that have passed on you twice. That's the thing about these rooms. Everyone remembers. Jenna opens her laptop, tries to bring up the cap table. Her hands are shaking, just a little. You watch her scroll too fast, click the wrong file, then close it altogether. I have it printed, she mumbles. You don't respond. Instead, you reach for your bag. It's not dramatic. It's not final, but it's enough. Wait, Landon says. Is there something we've said or not said? You look up slowly. I came here today. You begin to observe. You pause, and you gave me everything I needed before the presentation started. Jake straightens. We were under the impression, the managing partner. You were under many impressions, you interrupt. And that's the problem. Parker doesn't say a word. He's seen you do this before. Landon runs out of lines. Can I ask? Jenna says, her voice tighter now. Was there a moment we lost the opportunity? You appreciate the question. It comes too late. It was before you walked in, you answer, but the confirmation came with the coffee. You rise slowly, adjust your jacket, and glance around the room. Not for emphasis, just to let the silence breathe. Thank you for your time, you say. Jenna stands too quickly, knocking a pen to the floor. She bends to retrieve it, then holds it like something fragile, unsure where to place it now. Landon remains seated, but you see it in his jaw. The realization that charm doesn't scale past the front door. That respect isn't automatic. That no amount of buzzwords can overwrite a first impression made on the wrong person. And you? You don't gloat. You never have. But the weight in your chest is not anger. It's memory. Because 15 years ago, someone mistook you for an intern at the company you built from a garage. They walked past you, handed you a box of Ethernet cables, and said, "Can you wire up the router while we do the important part?" You did. You wired their router. Then 2 years later, you bought out your own shares and disappeared from their quarterly reports. And 5 years after that, they came to pitch to your firm under a different name, with a different product, not realizing you still remembered every face in that room. You don't forget. That's what they never learn. You reach the door, pause, and turn to Parker. You coming? He nods, rises, and follows. As you walk down the hallway, sunlight streaks through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Your heels echo softly. Not loud, not meant to draw attention, but rhythmic, like punctuation. You were quiet, Parker says when the elevator closes behind you. They were loud enough for both of us. You reply. You pull out your phone, type a quick note to your associate. Pulse board AI declined. No follow-up. No salvage. Parker exhales. They won't forget this. You don't answer. They will try to, but they won't, because there's something unforgettable about being overlooked by someone who turns out to be watching everything. And this time, you weren't just watching for yourself. You were watching for every woman who was ever asked to fetch coffee in a room she was supposed to lead. The drive back is quiet. Parker lets the silence linger, which is one of the reasons you trust him. Some men rush to fill it with justifications, apologies, or nervous praise. But Parker knows better. He was there when you got passed over for your own Series A. He watched you walk out a company you built, not because you lost, but because you refused to shrink. Still, he glances over once as the redwoods blur past the passenger window and asks, "Want to debrief now or wait?" You rest your head back on the leather seat. Later, because the truth is, it's not the pitch that's replaying in your mind. It's Jenna, not Landon, not Jake. Their textbook, a dime a dozen in venture meetings. They'll recover, pivot, rebrand. But Jenna, she's a version of you that stayed quiet. You remember being her age, 30, maybe 31, and believing that invisibility was protection. That if you kept your head down, nodded in the right places, and double-check your numbers, you'd be safe. That competence would buy you grace. But it doesn't. You learned that in your 5th year at your old company, when your name was scrubbed from a keynote press release, and they told you it was because the narrative flows better with fewer names. As if contribution had a word count. As if impact needed to be palatable to investors first. You look down at your phone. There's a new message from your associate. You were right. Pulse Board pitched the same deck at 2 other firms. No mention of Jenna in either version. You don't respond. Not because you're surprised, but because part of you had hoped, quietly, that she was more than a name buried on a team slide. That maybe she was waiting to speak, just needed a gap wide enough to fit through. Instead, she clicked slides like a remote control, like her own presence had an expiration date. And yet, something about her still lingers with you. Maybe it's the way her voice trembled when she apologized, not from fear, but from something deeper, recognition, the kind that doesn't come from being called out, but from finally seeing what you've allowed to happen. You arrive back at the office. The team doesn't ask questions. Your presence answers them all. In your office, the air smells faintly of cedar and ink, the kind of scent that grounds you after meetings filled with recycled phrases and startup cologne. You place your bag on the desk, slide the folio out, and sit for a long moment before opening it. The evaluation grid is marked in red, a color you reserve for teams that failed a human test. Not the product test, not the scalability test, but the test that measures character when power is uncertain. You flip the page. Start a new one. At the top, you write, Jenna Morales, observations. You write, deferred speech to others, even when data was hers. Body language, diminished, folded, closed off. Avoided eye contact until prompted. No self-introduction, but seemed to listen deeply. Then, in a different pen, you add, possible recommendation, one-on-one outreach. Conditional, worthwhile. You draw a box around the note. Leave it open, just like her story. Not closed. Not yet. You lean back, eyes drifting to photo on your shelf. Your mother, standing outside her sewing shop in Fresno, smiling with arms crossed, like she'd stitched her entire dignity into the hem of her apron. She used to say, don't let them teach you silence is grace, Madeline. Grace is knowing when not to explain. She never got a boardroom, never saw a cap table, but she knew exactly how power worked. Quiet, unsaid, but undeniable. You hear a knock. Parker again, this time holding 2 mugs. I figured you weren't really drinking the coffee from earlier. You nod and accept the mug. You think I was too hard on them? You ask, not because you doubt, but because you respect the answer. Parker sips before speaking. You were precise, not cruel. You consider that. Precision can feel like cruelty to those used to being indulged. After a pause, he adds, Jenna looked like she wanted to say something. Did you catch it? You nod. Yes. Do you think she'll reach out? You look at your notes again, then fold the page closed. I don't know, you say honestly. But if she does, I'll answer. That night you stay late, not with spreadsheets or pitch decks. You spend the last hour cleaning your office, rearranging files, lighting a small candle you keep hidden in your drawer, clearing your desk like a ritual, because endings deserve space. And this meeting, no matter how subtle, marked a shift. Tomorrow, you'll meet a different team, one that probably won't mistake you for the help. But today wasn't about them. It was about the line between being seen and being remembered. You stand by the window, sipping from your mug, watching the city go quiet. Somewhere out there, Jenna is probably wondering if she failed. Or worse, if she was never meant to succeed. And you? You hope she understands one thing before the night ends. That sometimes being overlooked isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's just where the turning begins. 3 days pass before you hear from her. Not through official channels. Not through Parker or the assistant inbox. Just a short, plain email sent at midnight from a personal account. Subject line, if you're open to it. The message is brief. No attachments. No preamble. I saw what I missed. Not just about you, but about myself. If there's still space for a conversation, I'd be grateful. You read it twice. Then again, not because the words are complicated, but because the tone isn't. It's not polished, not rehearsed. It's not the kind of message you send to save face. It's the kind you write when you're finally tired of hiding behind one. You don't reply right away. You take the morning. Make coffee the slow way. Let the silence in your apartment stretch over hardwood floors and high ceilings. Your windows face east, and the sun cuts across the counter like a blade. You like mornings like this. Controlled. Measured. Yours. At 10, you write back. Tomorrow, 10:30. At the office. No slides. Just bring yourself. You don't sign it. You don't need to. When she arrives, she's different. Not dramatically. Not performatively. But you notice the changes. She's wearing black instead of navy. Hair down, not pinned. And most of all, she walks in like someone who knows this isn't a pitch. It's a reckoning. Thank you for making time, she says. You nod toward the chair across from you. No handshake. No niceties. You're not here to mentor. You're here to see. She doesn't sit immediately. She looks around your office like someone reading a page from a life she hasn't lived yet. I didn't realize, she says softly, how much of the room I taught myself not to enter. You say nothing. The moment doesn't need decoration. She continues, quieter now. I've been with them for almost 4 years. Built most of the internal systems. Created the ops model. But I stayed off the decks. Out of the photos. You raise an eyebrow. Why? She doesn't answer right away. Then, because I thought it was a price of access, of security. That being in the room was enough. You nod slowly. And now, she lifts her gaze to meet yours. Now I realize that being in the room isn't the same as being at the table. That gets your attention. Because it took you years, more than a decade, to articulate that truth. And here she is, saying it without flinching. You lean forward. What do you want from this conversation? Jenna breathes in, holds it, lets it go. I want to learn how to stop apologizing for being underestimated. You let that sentence sit in the air. Then you ask, why do you think I said no to the team? She thinks, carefully, because of how they treated you. No, you interrupt gently. That was just a symptom. She hesitates, then nods slowly. Because of how we treat people we think aren't necessary. Now you lean back, eyes scanning her face. Closer. Jenna doesn't smile, but her jaw sets. You said you used to be me, she says. So maybe I'm asking, how do I become you? It's a vulnerable question. The kind most people never dare ask aloud. You answer the only way you know how. Truthfully. You stop thinking there's power in being invisible. You stop waiting to be invited into the version of success someone else wrote, and you start building one where you don't need permission to belong. Jenna blinks, but her gaze doesn't drop. You gesture to the folio on your desk, the one from that meeting. You were the only one I didn't write off. She swallows, but I didn't say anything. No, you reply, but I saw you listening. And more importantly, I saw you realize in real time how much you've been erasing yourself. She flinches slightly. You don't apologize. This is what awakening feels like. You say, messy, sharp, personal. Jenna nods. Her voice wavers. I'm scared. You nod back. Good. She tilts her head. Fear means there's something real on the other side of this. Something worth reaching. The room goes quiet again. This time, not out of awkwardness, but reverence. Eventually, Jenna speaks again. If I walk away from them, I don't have anywhere to land. You consider that. Then reply, I'm not offering you a job. Not yet. What I am offering is clarity. A door, not a guarantee. She nods. It's enough. You stand, walk to the window. The sun has shifted. The city looks smaller from here. Not because it is, but because your perspective has changed over time. You remember standing at the same window after your first major deal. The ink still fresh, your signature on the page that shifted your firm into national relevance. Back then you cried, not because of joy, but because a version of you who once begged for a seat had finally realized she'd always been the one holding the blueprint. You turned back to Jenna. She's standing now too, hands at her sides. Not clenched, not tense, just ready. You extend a card, one of your personal ones, not the standard print. On it, your direct line. No gatekeepers. If you leave, call me. She takes it like it weighs more than paper. You watch her go, and you hope, quietly, fiercely, that she uses it. Not because you owe her, but because one day she'll sit at a table someone tries to exclude her from. And when that day comes, you want her to remember what you told her today. That silence is not your shield. It's your test. You don't hear from her for 6 weeks. No email, no text, not even a LinkedIn notification. And you don't chase it because you know the space between realization and action is rarely immediate. It's not a sprint. It's a shedding of comfort, of denial, of whatever illusion made silence feel safer than presence. But on the 43rd day, you're walking out of a due diligence meeting when Parker hands you his phone. She's downstairs, he says. You take it, read the message on screen. Jenna Morales, lobby, no meeting, just clarity. You tell Parker to send her up. When the door opens, she steps in with the kind of quiet you recognize, the kind that comes after a hard decision has been made and lived with. This time, she looks different again. No blazer, no binder, no nervousness around the edges. She's holding a manila envelope, and something behind her eyes is new. Conviction. Let me guess. You say, they didn't take it well. Jenna sets the envelope down. They told me I was overreacting, that leaving now would look emotional, that I was throwing away an opportunity I'd never find again. You raise an eyebrow. And what did you say? She sits down across from you and folds her hands. I said if that opportunity requires me to stay small, then I hope I never find it again. You almost smile. Almost. Instead, you open the envelope. Inside, an annotated breakdown of Pulseboard's internal org chart, compensation discrepancies, IP structure, and early documentation showing her as contributor on modules later scrubbed from official filings. You whistle, low and long. Did they know you kept copies of this? She shrugs. They assumed I was too loyal. You nod. Loyalty. A word they use when they mean silent compliance. You're not planning to sue? You ask. No, she replies. I'm planning to build. This time, you do smile. She continues. I've been sitting on a concept for a year. Workflow prediction for hybrid teams. Real tech. No posturing. And I want to do it right. You glance through the proposal. She's included. It's rough, but not naive. She's learned the structure of rooms like this, and now she's ready to shape one of her own. I'll need a CTO, she says. You wait, but not a savior. I just need someone who sees what I see. You hand back the papers. You'll need more than CTO. You'll need a spine thick enough for 2 years of doubt, funding delays, and people questioning whether you've earned your place. She meets your gaze without flinching. I have that now. Then why come to me? Because I want the table to look different this time. You nod. Good answer. You don't offer her money. Not yet. You offer something rarer. You flip your folio open and write a name. Slide it across the desk. Talk to her. You say. She walked away from a 7-figure offer to build something on her own terms. She'll tell you how many nights you'll want to quit and why it's worth staying. Jenna glances at the name. Is she like you? You pause. No, she's like you. She exhales, slow and deliberate. You can almost hear the weight leaving her spine. But there's one more thing. You lean forward. There will be people who try to drag you back, who say you're bitter, that you burn bridges. She nods. You continue. Let them talk. Bridges to places you've outgrown aren't meant to hold. She laughs, just once, and it's the kind that's been waiting at the back of her throat for years. I spent so long trying to keep the peace, she says, and I thought peace meant everyone liking me. You tilt your head, and now I think peace means not betraying myself to earn a seat. You tap your pen once. Now you're starting. She stands, smooths her shirt, and picks up the envelope. Will you keep a copy? She asks. You shake your head. No, that belongs to the old version of you. I don't invest in ghosts. She nods, but before she reaches the door, she turns back. "What about you?" she asks. "What about me? Who helped you when you walked out?" You pause, then answer quietly. "No one." She flinches. "That must have been lonely." "It was," you say, "but I never confuse solitude with weakness." She looks down for a moment, then up again. "I won't forget this." "I hope not," you say. "But more importantly, I hope you never forget what you almost accepted." And then she's gone. You sit for a moment in the echo of her steps, then open your laptop. You add one line to your private investment notes. Jenna Morales, not a founder yet, but close, closer than most. You lean back in your chair, letting the words settle. Outside, the sun begins to drop low behind the skyline. The city glows in amber streaks, and the horizon splits between memory and momentum. She'll face backlash, doubt, the familiar sting of being underestimated. But this time, she'll know how to recognize it early. This time, she'll have her own pen. The next time you see her, it's not in your office. It's not in a coffee shop or on a Zoom call or inside a safe circle where she can control the narrative. It's on a panel. You're seated 3 chairs apart under fluorescent lights and a banner that reads, "Women in Venture, leading the next wave." The irony isn't lost on you. The wave, they say, as if you haven't been quietly moving ocean for years. She's the third speaker. You're the final one. There's an audience of nearly 200. Founders, fund managers, reporters with sharp ears and sharper pens. And just like that, she stands. Jenna doesn't fidget, doesn't overprepare. She isn't reading from cue cards or trying to sound like she belongs. She knows now. She's lived enough days beyond the pitch deck to realize that confidence is not a volume. It's a frequency. She speaks for 8 minutes. You count them, not because you're watching the clock, but because you're measuring cadence, watching her navigate the silence between sentences, holding space without apology. She says, "I spent years confusing inclusion with permission." Someone near the front exhales sharply. You know that sound. Recognition. A woman's version of a war cry. Jenna continues, "They said I was lucky to be in the room, but I never questioned why the room wasn't lucky to have me." You don't nod. You don't smile. But inside, something unwinds. A tension you hadn't realized you were holding. When the panel ends, applause rolls through the space. Loud. Full. No longer polite. And still, no one claps louder than you. After the event, people gather. Photos. Business cards. Flashes of performative allyship you've learned to let pass without much weight. But Jenna finds you in the crowd, her eyes steady. "I didn't know you'd be here," she says. You arch an eyebrow. "Would it have changed anything?" She shakes her head. "No." "Good." You step aside, let the noise fade. "How's the build?" you ask. She lights up, not in that fake, polished way people use to impress backers. "This is real. We just closed our pre-seed. Small round. Intentional cap table. No seats filled out of guilt." You almost laugh. "And the name?" "Fifth table." You pause. "Explain." She smiles. "I used to be invited to panels and asked to sit at the 4th table back, near the snacks, near the assistants. It became a joke in my head. You're at the 4th table, but you're thinking like the 1st. You nod slowly. "So now," she continues, "I'm building the 5th table, the one no one expected, the one that doesn't ask permission to exist." You look at her, and you feel it. Not pride, not relief, but something stronger. Legacy. Not the kind built on headlines or exits, but the kind built when someone sees your silence and decides to speak differently. "I want to offer internships," she says, "for women who want in but don't know how to start. Not mentorship, actual pipelines. I already have 3 candidates from community colleges." You let her speak, let her dream aloud, because this is the version of her that never would have survived the old team. This is a version she saved. And then she says something you don't expect. "I think I finally understand your silence." You turn to her, curious. She doesn't flinch. You weren't withholding. You were watching, letting people write their own evaluations before you ever touched the pen. You consider that. It's not silence if you're listening. You say, it's strategy. She nods once. But it's lonely, isn't it? You look out at the fading crowd, the slow hush of a conference center at dusk. Yes, you admit, but it's less lonely than sitting at a table where no one sees you. A beat of quiet. Then Jenna says, that panel chair, the one with a broken leg? I fixed it before I sat down. You look at her. She grins. Figured if I'm going to speak, I might as well sit in a chair that does wobble. There it is. The dry humor. The quiet edge. The woman you hope would make it. You reach into your coat pocket, hand her a folded sheet. She opens it. Your firm's logo. A non-disclosure heading. A single sentence. We are formally inviting Jenna Morales to join the advisory board for early-stage founder equity readiness programming, effective immediately. Her eyes go wide. Then still, I didn't ask for this, she says. I know, you reply. You earned it anyway. She blinks once, twice, then tucks the paper away. I'll do it, she says. But only if we call the first session Don't Mistake Her for the assistant. You smile. Deal. As the lights dim and the space empties, you walk out together, not as mentor and mentee, not as giver and receiver, but as something else. Mirror and echo. You pause at the exit, watching her step forward into the city light. Head high, bag slung over one shoulder. Not hurrying, not hesitating. She's not the same woman you first met across your desk. And you're not the same woman who once stood at a door waiting to be invited in. You built your door. She's walking through hers now. And somewhere, years from this moment, another woman will walk into a room, be handed someone else's coffee cup, and think about it for half a second before setting it down. Because by then, the room will already look different. Because of women like her. Because of women like you. 6 months later, you get an invitation. It's a slim, cream-colored envelope, addressed by hand, no branding, no fanfare. The kind of mail that feels intentional before it's even opened. Inside, a single card. Thick paper. Soft embossing. 5th table, launch dinner. Hosted by Jenna Morales. Location, undisclosed. Time, 8 p.m. Dress code, come as you are. You smile before you even finish reading. There's no RSVP button. Just a note at the bottom, written in ink, for the women who watched first and chose to stay anyway. You fold the card and slide it into your desk drawer, right next to a pin your mother once gave you, a tiny brass needle threaded through a golden circle. She called it her seal of dignity, said it reminded her to hold herself together, even when the world wanted her to fall apart. You arrived 10 minutes early, not out of habit, out of respect. The venue is small, intimate, a renovated studio tucked behind an art gallery in downtown San Jose. Inside, soft lighting casts warm shadows across a long wooden table set for 12. Real linen napkins, handwritten name cards. There's no stage, no microphones, just a table. Jenna greets each guest herself. No staff, no assistant, no clipboard in hand. She wears a charcoal dress and sneakers. No jewelry except for a silver ring shaped like an ampersand. You ask about it as she pours you a glass of water. It reminds me there's always more, she says. More to learn, more to give, never just a period. She doesn't seat herself at the head of the table. She takes the middle. The room fills with voices, low and textured, not loud, not forced. Founders, advisors, engineers, a lawyer who left her firm to build a consultancy just for women negotiating equity packages. No panels, no cameras, just conversation. Jenna stands only once. She doesn't clear her throat, doesn't ask for attention. But when she speaks, the room goes still. There was a day I thought being in the room was enough, she begins. That if I smiled at the right time, took the notes, stayed in the background, I'd be safe. I'd be needed. A pause. And then someone sat at the end of the table and didn't ask to be seen. She just watched. And in that silence, I saw the mirror I'd been avoiding. You feel the room shift, the kind of silence that holds breath, not absence. I don't want the next generation of women to see themselves in the reflection of someone who waited too long. So I built this. She lifts her glass to the women who weren't just first, but who didn't leave after. You raise yours with her. So do the others. And in that clink of glass on glass, something clicks into place. You're not watching from the end of the table anymore. You're a part of the design. After dinner, someone starts clearing plates, and you find yourself near the small kitchen, rinsing silverware with Jenna like two women who never needed to prove they belonged here, just needed time to remember. You knew I'd make it, she says. You hand her a plate. No, I knew you'd decide to. She wipes it dry, then asks, when did you stop waiting to be chosen? You think for a moment, then say, when I realized the only thing worse than being underestimated is underestimating yourself. She laughs, a quiet, real laugh, one that pulls from her ribs. Then softly, I don't know if I ever said thank you. You shake your head. You don't owe me that. She places a last spoon on the rack and looks at you. But I do, she says, because you were the first person who didn't tell me to speak up. You made me notice I hadn't. You reach into your coat and pull out a small box. She opens it carefully. Inside, a miniature brass ampersand pin, an exact replica of your mother's. This belonged to someone who taught me what staying silent with purpose looks like. You say? She never had a seat at the table, but she built her own counters. Jenna runs a finger over the edge of the symbol, eyes suddenly wet. I'll wear it, she whispers. You believe her. The night winds down. People leave in twos and threes, voices hushed, promises made. No contracts, no closing remarks, just a quiet agreement of presence, sealed without ceremony. You step out into the cool night air. The city hums. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel like you're carrying the weight alone. Not because the world has changed, but because now, when someone asks you what the power is, you don't have to point. You just have to gesture toward the fifth table. You wake the next morning before the sun. It's quiet, not the kind of quiet that waits for sound, the kind that soothes you, like warm water slipping over your thoughts. The floor is cold under your bare feet. You move through your apartment in rhythm, not routine. Everything feels slower in a way that isn't lazy, just intentional. You make coffee, the strong, bitter kind your mother used to drink, and pour it into your favorite mug, the one with the tiny crack near the handle you never fixed. A reminder that strength doesn't require perfection. Outside the window, the street is still half asleep. Delivery vans sigh against the curb. Somewhere, someone is just now ending their night shift. Somewhere else, someone is rehearsing what they'll say when they finally decide to walk out. You sit at the kitchen table, steam curling toward your face. Your inbox is already full. Investors forwarding updates. Founders asking for reviews. A journalist requesting comment for a feature titled Women Who Walked First. You flag it for later. Maybe. Maybe not. You open the folder sitting on your table. The one you started the night Jenna first pitched her exit. Inside, nothing groundbreaking. Just handwritten notes. Names. Patterns. Observations. Quiet data that doesn't show up in spreadsheets. You flip to the last page. There's a single sentence scrawled in your own writing. Build the table. Then move aside. You close the folder and smile. Not everything you create is meant to be kept. Some things are meant to be handed off. Not as a burden, but as a baton. Your phone buzzes. A text from Jenna. We just confirmed our first enterprise pilot. Starting Q1. Thought you should be the first to know. Also the intern from San Diego. She asked me last week why the cap table had no men. I told her it wasn't on purpose. It was just the result of who showed up ready. You reply with one word. Exactly. You take your coffee to the living room. The morning light spills onto the couch. You sit, curl your leg beneath you, and let yourself exhale without armor. There's no applause here. No stage. No spotlight. But that doesn't matter. Because something softer lives in this silence now. Not the sharp edge of being underestimated. Not the exhaustion of having to prove. Just space. You fold the laundry still warm from the dryer. Stack your notebooks. Water the plant on your windowsill that refused to die, even when you forgot it for a week in February. You pause at your bookshelf, fingers brushing over titles that once held your survival. Now, they simply hold memory. In the hallway mirror, you catch your own reflection. No makeup, hair still unbrushed. A line at the corner of your mouth that wasn't there 5 years ago. You don't reach to smooth it. You smile. Later, maybe, you'll draft a letter to the women in your firm, the ones rising through the ranks. Maybe you'll share what you've learned. Or maybe not. Maybe they already know. Maybe they've watched you long enough. You glance again at the folded ampersand pen on the coffee table. You think of your mother, her hand steady even when her world wasn't. How she sewed through storms and still found time to make you believe in your own name. She never sat in rooms like this, never signed term sheets. But she taught you how to walk away from tables that required your silence as an entry fee. Now you don't walk away. You walk through, not faster, not louder, just fuller. You think of Jenna, of the girl she used to be, of the woman she's becoming. And you know, in the deepest part of yourself, that something has shifted. Not everything, but enough. Enough for the next woman to hesitate for half a second less. Enough for her to speak 5 minutes sooner. Enough for her not to question if she belongs, but to wonder what took so long for the room to catch up. You pour the last of the coffee into your cup. Step out onto the small balcony overlooking the street. The city is awake now. Cars sliding into lanes, sneakers hitting pavement, elevators humming. Another day begins. And this time, you're not bracing for it. You're meeting it. Fully, calmly, without explanation. Because in the silence you left behind, the founder who doubted you, the partner who underestimated you, the system that tried to mislabel you, you didn't just rebuild. You rose. At the Story Atelier, I don't just tell stories. I unearth quiet truths. Tonight's journey wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. It was about the cost of being overlooked and the quiet authority of a woman who refuses to shrink. If you've ever been the one holding the coffee while they handed credit elsewhere, if you've ever sat silently, knowing more than the room assumed, then you already understand the power of this story. This video holds a deep and meaningful lesson. Respect should never be reactive, because as Eleanor Roosevelt once said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. If this moved you, even a little, comment below. Your voice helps this channel grow. And if you're willing, subscribe. Your support helps the Story Atelier reach 1,000 subscribers, a goal that fuels the heart of every video I create. Thank you for watching. And remember, not all power speaks loudly, but it speaks.